You tired of constantly putting things off, only to feel overwhelmed and stressed at the last minute? Picture this. It's Sunday night. You spent all weekend hanging out with your friends, going out to dinner, maybe played some video games and took a nice long nap. Before you get into bed, you decide to hop on your computer to look at what you have going on this week. And that's when it hits you. Right there, staring you in the face, is the deadline for that big project you were assigned 3 weeks ago. You know, the one you haven't even started yet. Oh, fuck. Like a good little worker bee, you spent all night trying to piece together something that you can excuse for an honest effort that makes it seem like you might have worked on this for roughly 3 weeks. But why do we do this to ourselves? Why do I do this to myself? This project was nothing new. It was one of the hundreds we've done throughout our lives, from our days in school to our first job, and even into our romantic relationships, that for one reason or another, we procrastinated and waited until the last minute to even start. Well, today, I'm going to share 3 strategies that help me stop procrastinating forever. Sort of. The fact is that you can't do everything that you have to do. You have to procrastinate on something. This is a quote from Brian Tracy's book on procrastination, Eat That Frog. The premise of the whole book is that if you had to eat a frog every single day, the best time to do it would be first thing in the morning. Because why would you want to have to stare at it all day, with the pressure of eating it looming over you while you try to accomplish everything else that your life demands of you? The frog in this example is the most challenging and important task that you need to complete for the day. And the whole philosophy is just geared around removing the shroud of uncertainty when it comes to what's most important to you. But in order to complete even the most important tasks, we have to procrastinate on something. And that something is everything else that's less important. So now you're saying to yourself, yeah, obviously I need to stop procrastinating and do the most important thing on my to-do list, but how do I stop procrastinating and actually do it? I got you. The first step in defeating your habit of procrastination is proper planning. And by that I mean creating some sort of physical to-do list. This one habit alone has reduced like 80% of my procrastination. There's been numerous studies that support the benefit of having a list where you actually get to cross items off in terms of how it affects cognitive function. The most notable of which is the Zeigarnik effect. What the Zeigarnik experiment found was that by interrupting the participants in the middle of tasks they were doing, they were able to much more easily recall details about it later on. In comparison, if participants were asked about the details of tasks they had already fully completed, they had a much harder time recalling them. What this shows is that when we allow tasks to linger in our mind without giving them a place to call home, they actually take up more mental real estate that could be better used for something else. We're basically just fighting an uphill battle if we try to store everything we need to do in our head. So if every morning you create a thorough to-do list of all of the most important tasks you need to do, then our brain no longer has to keep track of them for you. This also primes our brains to prepare itself for the work ahead. If you're going to walk from Atlanta to New York City, you probably wouldn't do so without a map. The same goes for being productive. Your to-do list is your roadmap to point you in the right direction. The last part of the Eat That Frog method is understanding the law of forced efficiency. The law states that there is never enough time to do everything, but there's always enough time to do the most important thing. Remember when I said you still have to procrastinate on some things? Well, if you actually made a to-do list and truly put only the most important things at the top, sometimes you have to remember to do first things first and second things maybe not at all. The reality of life nowadays is that there will always be too many demands on our time. Learning to say no to some of the other things just makes it that much easier to say yes to the things that we really need to get done. Remember, you can't add to a full plate. Moving on from amphibians, the next strategy lies in the power of the first step. And how can we take the first step without breaking things down into more manageable pieces? As the saying goes, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Not sure why I'm stuck on eating random animals today. But if your boss gives you a big project to do, your to-do list isn't just going to say, finish project. It's going to say things like, do research for project, do outline for project, delegate part XYZ of project. When you have it broken down like this, it makes it so much simpler to take that first step day in and day out to make steady progress. The first step is always the hardest, and if you can just fight through it, it makes it so much easier to keep going. I have been known to make the first step in my to-do list literally just sort out steps of process, because then I have an easy win and I can just really lay into the momentum. And just a quick note for all the perfectionists out there like me, it becomes much easier to fend off procrastination if you apply the 80% rule. You don't have to get things perfectly right on your first try. Just get them 80% of the way there, and then you can always come back to it if you need to. And what I've often found is that because I really care about what I'm doing, when I get things 80% of the way, a lot of people think I'm just completely done with it anyways. When you learn to prioritize really well, what you find is that most other people are getting like 90% of the way on some sort of semi-useless task that doesn't really even drive progress. But that's not you, because you're here and you're learning to be more effective, and that alone shows that you do care. I don't apply this to everything though. I think there is a balance with some of the creative work I do, that I really make the active decision to put in like every ounce of effort that I can, but I also have to remain self-aware enough to recognize when Trying to make something better becomes putting off things that really matter in favor of procrastination. With all that being said, you have to be able to hold yourself accountable. A lot of people like to say, gun to your head, you'd be able to do it, but hopefully that'll realistically never happen. So we have to be able to create that pressure to get ourselves motivated, because no one is going to come save you and force you to make the first step. The responsibility lies on us to get the ball rolling, so we have to remove as much friction as possible for that to happen easily. Real quick before we get into the last strategy, this video is sponsored by me. It takes a lot of work for me to do on my own, from all the writing and the producing and editing of my own content, so if you made it this far in the video, I'd appreciate it if you hit subscribe. Back to the video. To remove the most friction possible, we come to our third strategy in crushing your procrastination, which is knowing your tools and how to use them. Just like a carpenter brings the right tools to a job site and wouldn't use a hammer to cut a 2x4, we have so many options for tools that can help us be productive. The flip side of that is that these tools can very quickly become distractions, and your phone is the worst offender of them all. Some people like to turn their phones off or use certain apps to limit what they can open. If that's what you need to remove distractions, then go for it. What I like to do is turn my phone on vibrate with the do not disturb setting turned on. This means that unless you're one of my contacts that I've saved as a favorite, like family or close friends, then my phone won't go off if I receive a call or a text or some sort of notification. But I can still be reached in case of emergency, which is necessary when you have a baby. I also have it set up to block all app notifications. That way I don't have to go in and individually select the stuff I don't want to see, like Instagram and Twitter and any other app that tries to ping me 50 times a day. Whether you realize it or not, your environment is a tool that you can manipulate to procrastinate less. Having a clutter-free or at least distraction-free workspace is a big factor in being able to get to work when you need to. Think of it this way. If you sit down at your desk and you have yesterday's lunch still on it and an Xbox controller and you left open the chili scene from The Office, you're probably not going to get much work done. What you're probably going to do is clean things up a little bit and maybe watch the infamous chili scene before you realize you're too tired to do any work right now and you need to reward yourself for a hard day's work by playing Call of Duty. I know, because this was me like 2 years ago when I used to do remote IT work. The final point that I'll make on understanding your tools is that work with what you have now and better tools will be found along the way. We often look at more successful people and we say, well, of course they can do that. They have more experience, or they have a full team, or they have all this startup capital. And all of those things are probably true. And I'm willing to bet that if you looked back on their journey to success, you'd probably see someone a lot like you, who started with nothing but strong will and determination. The more that you do, the more that you'll learn, and the more you'll realize how much more you're actually capable of. And once you get there, you just maintain your momentum, and it feels like nothing can stop you. So there you have it, 3 strategies to crush your procrastination for good. If you enjoyed this, then maybe you'll enjoy this other video about 5 questions to find your direction in life. Anyways, thanks for stopping by. I'll see you in the next one.